I hope your weekend is going well. Here are a few setups we are watching here this week. As always, if you do find value in this, if you could please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. Now into the breakdown. All right, so the first thing I always like to do is we can break down the market. Before I even get into that, one thing I want to note here this week is it's a tremendously loaded earnings week with things, even some things on the watch list that have earnings, like things like Tesla, Meta, all of them. A majority of mega caps outside of like AMD have earnings this week. So going to be a really, really big week in terms of earnings, and couple that with, you can see there is quite a bit of data out this week with even PCE price index, which inflation coming back into the market and being a more or less a talking point of the market now in terms of what the Fed is going to do with rates. I'm expecting this to have a lot more of volatility and impact. And even on top of that, we have the FOMC here on Wednesday. So what a loaded week this is. It's going to, in my opinion, be a little more tricky because you're going to be coming in at the beginning of the week and all of the premiums are going to be jacked up for earnings. So I doubt we'll find a higher quality setup before the earnings. Maybe if those premiums are moving decent, but in my opinion, they likely are going to be jacked up. Obviously, for earnings it's not really going to be that good until the later half of the week, especially after FOMC. Now, when we come into the NQ here, let's do a top-down look. When we come into this here, we get this breakdown here, which lower lows, lower highs, lower low, obviously off of these pivots. And in a short-term downtrend, now we're breaking this, we're basing. We attempted the move higher here today. That ultimately ended up getting stuffed to the downside. So for me, the key is 22.06725. This is going to be the line in the sand for me for longs on a move over, targeting these all-time highs right here at 22.450. So really, that's the main watch here. If we can get this move into that break of 22.06725s for longs here on Monday up into those 52-week highs. On the contrary, what am I looking for the downside? It's simply just a break below this bar's low. That means that we could just be putting in another lower high off of this prior region or the all-time highs here, which could trigger us down into 21629.75. So really, that's the first level to watch for longs. And then the second level here is a target below this prior day low here on the NQ for a short move to the downside. And when we zoom into a shorter term trend chart here on the hourly, you can see we flipped this downtrend. Now we're working our way basing into this uptrend here. However, putting in a lower high here on Friday before this move lower. Watching again, 22.06725s is the line in the sand for longs here this week. And then one thing I would also like to do is take a break or take a look at least at the weekly. Nice failed breakdown here on that weekly. We broke below its low, held this 20 moving average, and now we're getting this buy setup and really an indecision bar where we can go either way. Over 22.06725s is preferred for that upside this week. AMD, this is unfortunately one of the only ones that doesn't have earnings this week, meaning that then the premium shouldn't be as inflated as other large cap names before they release their earnings. So hence why it is on watch here. And if we go and we look at this one from the perspective of, and let me actually go down here. From the perspective of the hourly, it's in a downtrend, but we're trying to flip trend here on the hourly chart into where you can see this is a clear downtrend, right? But now we're trying to work our way into the shorter term uptrend here. So for me, the main look that I have is going to be long over 124.34, targeting 131.57, which is this prior reject and pivot before we made this move lower. So 124.34 is going to be key. This one doesn't have earnings this coming week, but it has it the following. So keeping that on watch. But I want to see if this is setting that higher low. We should get some sort of strength off of this that can come run and test those highs up there. So 124.34, any strength, either back through open, higher lows, something of that nature with relative strength. This is going to be a close watch this week. And then let's go into a name that out of nowhere just has a lot of strength here on Friday when the market was selling off in the afternoon session. Well, all of a sudden the market's going like this and Google is not having a care in the world. So it makes me question this relative strength. It has a lot of room. We're breaking out over this base here. So anything over 200.70, breaking out of this base and has room higher up into these 202.29 highs, which is roughly 1%. So if you can find a good entry with that as your target, I feel like it's a viable setup here to the upside, which is nothing more than a 3-bar pullback on the daily chart. So bar 1, 2, 3, and now we're triggering, making that a potential higher low. 200.70 is the line in the sand to take this to the upside. And even when we look at this from the weekly chart, we failed barely underneath this prior pivot. And then we get this nice slam higher and now a nice follow through bar. Caveat is, when is this one's earnings? Okay, so this one's next week as well. So this one's premiums should be better. Now, obviously, it's going to be moving with FOMC, be slightly inflated premiums in terms of that in the PCE index. But overall, technical-wise, this one does have a lot of room higher and even above 202. Even above this 202 region, targeting those psych regions, things like 205 and then 210 to the upside here. The last one, this one's going to be an interesting play in terms of it has earnings. And I believe, let's see when its earnings are 129 after market. So the reason why I have this on watch, and again, the thing with earnings is they can throw a wrench into technical. It doesn't matter about the technicals before an earnings announcement or after. It matters about the earnings. So technical wise, this is a 3-bar play on the daily, which is a nice setup in an already uptrending name that's trying to put in sequential higher lows, meaning that we're above the last week's high, above last week's high. For me, it really gets interesting over 423.38 for a long, and really over 439.21. I think if this one can find some strength here this week and trigger this move, we have room up into 480.25 with the earnings announcement being a catalyst. So that is something to watch here. I do think it has potential. Earnings always throw a damper into things, but if we can hold and really ideally get over 439.21 intraday with some relative strength to the market, watching this one long, targeting that 480.25 area. With that being said, that wraps up the watch list here for this week. If you found this helpful, please let me know down below. Let me know what you're watching, and as always, trade safe, and I hope you all have a great week. Thank you.